I always dug Eric Burdon. To me, he was the first guy to come along out of that British blues invasion with the Stones and all that. Which with the Stones, they had authentic roots, but they were doing it pretty pop, you know. But Eric Burdon, he had some hits, but he wasn't doing it pop, man. He was like screeching and yelling from the get-go, you know, and singing a little bit deeper tunes.
That is the story of the animals in the rock and roll scene in general. They made some records that enabled them to travel far physically, but much further mentally. With those Alan Price and old John Steele. Not as Rover and Jenkins, but it's still the same feel. They made many friends good and bad. Even made people happy while they were sad. The road wasn't easy, my friend, that's no lie. Now watch the heroes as they die. Watch the heroes as they die. I said watch the heroes as they die.
The Animals drummer, John Steele, was a student, along with myself, at the Newcastle College of Art and Industrial Design. From the very first morning of class, I was sitting in the classroom and I heard a voice from three chairs away, you know, like, is anybody interested in jazz, you know? And I put my hand up and turned around, and John Steele was sitting there.
And started talking music and movies, and you know, hit it off straight away with the same interests and things. And we got a band together pretty well straight away, and we played a gig at a church hall in Byker, Headlam Street, doubling up with another band. And the guitarist from this other band, the band was led by a guy on keyboards, you know, sort of Jerry Lee Lewis player, and the guitarist came up to us during an interval. And this was Alan Price. He said, do you mind if I sit in on piano? And, you know, there was the old upright piano there. And so he sat in with us and played a storm, and we thought, ooh, I like this. You know?
All the press releases on the Animals have always been like the Alan Price combo was the basis of the Animals, and that I joined the Alan Price combo, which is really not true. I mean, it's just that there was a series of bands.
I always remember when he said the name of the band was the Alan Price Combo, and I thought, Christ, what's the Alan Price Combo? You know, because bands at them days were like the Wildcats, the Cadillacs, and really sort of hard names. This sounded to me like a bunch of old men, you know. I was totally amazed at the first time I saw Eric performing.
Get off day Wednesday, gonna talk every day, every night. It's alright, it's alright, it's alright, it's alright, it's so good, it's alright. Come on in, everybody, everybody, everybody. Come on now, come on now, come on now, come on now, yeah, 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 whoa, whoa, yeah, let me tell you, I love nobody but you. You make me feel like I wanna jump and shout now. Come on, shout, come on and shout, come on and shout, come on and shout, yeah, oh, 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 yeah, 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 every day now, every day now, hey, 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 let me tell you one more time. You make me feel like I wanna shout, wanna shout, wanna shout.
singer, he was a natural sort of blues shouter, I thought. He's never trained himself to sing properly. He just sings naturally.
Eric sounded like he was really singing, but still had the rough and tough sound. And you only get that through age, through singing and screaming and beating your voice up. And if you're real young, you smoke enough cigarettes and drink enough whiskey, it sounds like that early. But then when you're 25, you can't sing anymore. So Eric had that at a young age. He had that sound. And it impressed me. I said, yeah, this is the real stuff.
To work the gigs with the band, you had to work for Mike Jeffrey in those days because he owned the two best venues in town.
He always wore dark glasses and dark suit. You know, he was secret agent man right from the get go, and made no bones about it.
We played almost exclusively for Mike. We would play 4 nights a week at the Go-Go. We'd play maybe a Friday night at the Downbeat. And then on a Saturday night, we'd play the early session at the Go-Go.
But the first one was a Downbeat, and it was such a hole, you know. It was a cellar 3 floors up.
It was great fun. I mean, the place was jumping. It was heaving with people. There's condensation streaming down the walls, you know. So it was a lot of fun. It was good fun, but it was just, you know, local. We didn't really think in terms of national success or making records. And then Mike started to get really busy. Mike Jeffries suddenly came up and started saying, look, we've got to get this thing organised properly. Sign here. This is a management contract. So we said, oh, wow, what do we get for this? You know, and he said, well, I think I can get you some work in London. And we said, where do we sign? Ding, ding, ding. And we all just signed like that.
So we all came to this point of realizing that music was a way out, and the fastest way out. And even though Mike Jeffries was a criminal, we all knew he was bent. We didn't care. He was our ticket out of town, and so we took it for what it was.
In this dirty old part of the city, where the sun refused to shine, yeah. People tell me there ain't no use in trying, yeah. Now my girl, you're so young and pretty, and one thing I know is true, yeah. You'll be dead before your time is due, I know it. What's my daddy in bed tonight? His hair been turning gray, yeah. Been working and slaving his life every night and day. Yes, I know it, baby. I've been working through my everything I got for you, we gotta get out of this place. If it's the life that we have, we gotta get out of this place. Girl, there's a better life for me and you.
Song called "We Gotta Get Out of This Place." The first time I heard that, I mean, I almost get to goosebumps just to talk about it now, because I came from a place, Fontana, which is like a steel town. It was probably like Birmingham or Newcastle, you know, in England, relative. You know, steel town. Everyone worked at the steel mill. It was dirty. You know, the air was bad. You smelled the steel mill every night. You smelled that sludge coming out of there. And you know, it's like you figure when you grow up, you're either gonna work at that steel mill, like your dad coming home black, you know, dirty, man, it's coal all over him, you know, soot, and you think you're either gonna work there or you gotta get out of this place, man. And that song hit home real big to me.
At the end of '63, Mike had gone to London, made a sort of reciprocal arrangement with the manager of the Yardbirds. They came up and did all the gigs that we normally did in the Northeast. We went down and played a lot of their gigs. It was bye-bye Newcastle, London bound, you know. And we never went back, really. First tour we actually did was organised for us by Don Arden, Peter Grant was working for Don Arden as a booker at the time, and he booked all our gigs in, and Don had got Chuck Berry, you know, which was a really big deal to us. We worshipped Chuck Berry.
Chuck Berry was definitely one of our heroes, and we would have signed anything to get on that tour.
Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Perkins, Tommy Tucker, Nashville Teens, King Size Tale on the Dominoes, and they were just incredible experiences.
You can imagine traveling on a little English bus from town to town with Chuck Berry and Jerry Lee Lewis on the same tour bus. I mean, you had a whole microcosm of America's problems on one tour bus, you know. One crazed Ku Klux Klan, gun-carrying, you know, NRA maniac was Jerry Lee, and, you know, Chuck trying to be, you know, surviving in a world gone mad, you know. And the two of them were at each other's throats, man, day and night, you know. In those early tour buses, the seats were rigid, you know, individual seats, and the only stretch-out seat was in the back, you know, where you could lie down. So the road manager, Peter Grant, would say, come on, you guys, now let's be fair, you know. Jerry Lee, you had the seat last night. Chuck's got to have the seat tonight. Anyway, Chuck's just gone into the charts at number 43, so that makes him rank bigger than you, you know. So he gets the back seat tonight. And Lee Lewis would say, man. And he'd reach for this Colt 45 and a shoulder harness, and his road manager, I mean, they were crazy, you know. It was wild. And that was before we even got to America. You can't out-rock Chuck Berry, you know. You can't do Johnny Be Good better than he does. You can't, you know, there's no way. So there was this song called House of Rising Sun that we've been doing for quite some time.
We had a tremendous amount of difficulty convincing our manager and Mickey Morse that we should record it. And they took the attitude, well, it's a waste of money. If you're going to record it, you've got to be at the studio 8 o'clock in the morning on Saturday the day.
So it was virtually a live performance. We ran through it halfway for balance, and then made one single take, and that was it.
There is a house in New Orleans they call the Rising Sun, and it's been the ruin of many a poor boy. And God, I know I'm one. My mother was a tailor. She sewed my new blue jeans. My father was a gambling man down in New Orleans.
We recorded House of Rising Sun in such a hurry. There was such a rush on it, so we printed it and shipped it immediately. And I remember Mike Jeffries calling a conference. So he comes into the room and he goes, fellas, we've only got one problem. He says, we've got to print up this record label really quick. And he says, there's not enough room on the label for everybody's name. And you all did arrange it, didn't you? And we all went, yeah. So what we'll do is we'll elect one person and we'll put one name on, and then we'll work it out later, okay? And we went, yeah, okay. Who? Well, how about Alan? Okay, so Alan Price's name went on there, you know, traditional arrangement, Alan Price.
And if anybody should have the credit, it was Hilton, really. But it's history now. And if you ask Alan today, he'll say with absolute sincerity and that he did the arrangement because he believes that now. But that's not the case.
Oh, mother, tell your children not to do what I have done.
management team. Give me a break. I mean, the Animals were ripped off from the get-go.
Mike Jeffries convinced us we had to work with Mickey Most. We didn't find out till 5 years later one of the reasons why he convinced us to work with Mickey Most was because he'd made a deal with Mickey Most for him and Mickey Most to share in the money.
I remember one point in time, there was a guitar solo needed for a certain tune, and the guitar solo wasn't up to scratch. And he said, the take was perfect, except for the guitar solo. We'll have to do it again. And Charles leant over and tapped him on the shoulder and said, Mickey, there's 4 tracks, man. You can mix it in. You don't have to do the guitar solo again. And he went, oh, I didn't realize that. You know, here's this guy's reckoned to be mega producer, and he didn't even know you could overdub.
You would go to America and sort of hunt around and get obscure stuff and bring it back and say, what do you think of that, you know?
Hey, like some old piece of rag that's a faded and blue, like some old piece of rag. That's all I am to you.
Mickey Most was a good picker of material, you know. He had a good ear for potentially commercial, successful songs, you know.
He found us. We got to get out of this place. He found It's My Life.
There'll be women and their fortunes who just want to further orphans. Are you gonna cry when I'm squeezing them dry? Taking all I can get, no regrets. When I, oh baby, lie, and they want their money, believe me, honey, that money, can you believe? I ain't no shame, no complaints, so go out, hand it down, and baby, remember, it's my life and I do what I want. It's my mind and I think what I want. Sure you're gone, girl, it's the time. Someday I'll treat you real fine. All right, sing it, baby. It's my life and I'll do what I want. It's my mind and I'll think what I do.
They tried to prune us and tune us down and dress us up like the Beatles. And we were told, you're off to America, behave yourselves. Even a choreographer was brought in. Ridiculous, you know what I mean? And I resented every minute of it.
I dug the fact that he wasn't a pretty boy. He always had the unkept, I don't give a shit look about him. The Stones were always very fashionable and stuff, you know. But Eric Burdon, he had this funk about him that, for me, it made me think that he was honest. I thought, this guy doesn't give a shit. He just wants to go out there and sing, you know.
When they booked us in America, they said, look, you've got to stop looking like a bunch of scruffs. You've got to sort of smarten yourself up because America just won't accept you. You know, they said, look at the Beatles, look at the success they've had, you know, those lovely little suits with the velvet collars and the mop-top haircut, you know. And we let ourselves be talked into it. And it was always a mistake, because when the Stones went over there, they just tore the place apart because they looked, you know, the thing about would you let your daughter marry a Rolling Stone?
Times Square welcomes the Animals in person, and the young Englishman will be around for a while filming an MGM movie in Manhattan.
All I wanted to do was escape.
Teenage magic so hard to explain to some grown-ups.
I remember being on the 43rd floor of this mega glass tower in New York City. You know, it was like 30 below zero outside, and then we're looking at a wall of cold, white-faced agents and managers and record company executives and lawyers in their business suits with dollar signs in their eyes. And I'd escape every night and go up to Harlem. I'd ensconce myself in the Apollo. Made friends with the manager, Honey Coles. He told me, hey, anytime you want to come here, man, the place is yours, you know. So I spent more time up in the Apollo and met B.B. King, Rufus Thomas, Big Maybelle, Chuck Jackson, the Shirelles, Dionne Warwick, and was around to take a lot of photographs and get to know them personally. And
the first people I was into were black singers as well, because for some reason I think, and it's probably the same situation with Eric, is that when you come from a more of a lower class situation, which I did, you know, a little poorer family, then you relate to people when they sing and the stuff they're talking about that are struggling. You don't relate to the rich guys.
So, you know, everybody else was just doing pop covers and things like that. We were doing stuff by but then very obscure people, you know, Jimmy Reed and Muddy Waters and John Lee Hooker and Bo Diddley, things like that. You know, people hadn't even heard of these guys.
I wanted to see Nina Simone all my life, because ever since I heard her voice, I reckoned that she was the proudest, blackest, most talented female in America, if not in the world, you know. She was a tigress as far as I was concerned. We had a little entourage, went to see the Goddess at Hunter College, and there was Linda McCartney, Linda Eastman then. And after the show, Linda went, you want to go backstage and meet her? And I said, well, not really, but, you know, let's get out of here, you know. She said, no, it's arranged, you know. So at the end of the room, there was Nina. I walked up towards her, and she looked me dead in the eye and said, so you're the white motherfucker that took my song and made millions out of it. So you're the white trash, you got. And I went, whoa, wait a minute. And I says, listen, man, I'll tell you something. If you give back some of the royalties to the prisoners in Angola State Prison that you ripped off, and you know, claimed that you wrote their work songs, you know, then I'll own up to ripping off your song, you know. But in actual fact, because I recorded Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood, the whole of England is waiting for your arrival. I've paved the way for you going to Europe. Thank you very much. And she went, oh, terribly sorry. My name's Miss Simone. What's yours? And I went, Eric Burdon. She said, sit down.
Baby, do you understand me now? If sometimes I seem to be mad, but don't you know that no one alive can always be an angel? But when things go wrong, I seem to be mad. I'm just a soul whose intentions are good. Oh Lord, please don't let me be misunderstood. Baby, sometimes I'm so carefree, with a joy that's hard to hide. And then again it seems that all I have to do is worry, and then you're bound to see my other side. But I'm just a soul whose intentions are good. Oh Lord, please don't let me be misunderstood.
I don't know if Eric and Alan could have evolved to be like Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, because they did try to write songs. They did write songs, but they never seemed to hit that kind of that main line. You know, that the sort of the thing that people could identify with. The way you know Rolling Stones songs still now have a kind of magic about them.
We were just about to begin a writing career, Alan and I, when I guess the first checks came in for House of Rising Sun. So we were just starting to sit down around the piano, and we're doing things like Inside Looking Out, I'm Crying, things like that. We're just starting to write together and stretch out like the other bands were, like the Stones were, and like the Beatles already had. The writing didn't go any further because he just disappeared. He took off with Bob Dylan and joined Bob's circus.
I ice cold water's running through my brain, and they take me back to work again, yeah. The pains and blisters on my minds and my hands, from working daily with those canvas bags, yeah. The thoughts of freedom, they're driving me wild. I'll be happy like a newborn child. We'll be together, girl, just wait and see, yeah. No walls and bars to keep your love from. Hey, baby, can't you hear my love? Oh, baby, baby, come on, please, it's all right, yeah, it's all right, baby,
The day he had his nervous breakdown and left the band was the day the first check came in.
As soon as he got his first check, he was gone. That was it.
I wouldn't be at all surprised if Mike Jeffries had a lot to do with that, because Alan Price was Mike Jeffries' bright-eyed boy. He had totally identified with Alan Price, and I think he always thought in his mind he would have a second band come out of this, and Alan Price would be the leader. I wouldn't mind betting he'd promised it to Alan. So Mike Jeffries, at the end of the day, always won.
Sacrifices I will make. I'm ready to give us, well as take. One thing I need is your respect. One thing I can't take is your neglect. Now, girl, I want your tender love. Then troubles are easy to rise above. Oh, no, no, don't bring me down. I'm begging you, darling. I say, oh, no, don't bring me down. Oh, I need you by my side now. Please, oh, no, don't bring me down. I'm begging you, darling. Help me, please. Oh, no.
We did the Ed Sullivan Show. We came out of the Ed Sullivan Show late at night into a limo to the airport, got on a plane, came back to England, got on a train and went up to Liverpool to start another tour.
Been working, still got a long way to go.
We went from one tour to the other. We went from one continent, and sometimes we had a day off to start the next tour.
We're basically a drinking band, but around about 65, Brian Jones introduced Hilton to LSD, and Hilton introduced Eric. That's when the differences started to occur, I think.
And within the band I was in, suddenly divisions were drawn, lines were drawn. We'd be high and we'd be looking at these guys sinking, tons of vodka and stumbling all over the place and falling downstairs and everything, and they'd be looking at us saying, "You're frying your brain, man,"
Drugs and alcohol helped break up the band, and also I think egos. I think our egos got a bit inflated. Actual bottom line was really mismanagement.
We were going berserk. We were at each other's throats. We're so tired all the time.
When you're tired, you get irritable. When you get irritable, fights break out. I'm sure that it could have been averted with the right planning.
I've been working, but I still got a long way to go. It's been working, I've been working, but I still got a long way to go.
You got yourself one great tour. You got the best promoter.
Connie Denard, chief publicist for the Animals in the U.S.
It's not going to be schlock. I really believe it's going to happen this trip. But we had press waiting at the airport when you arrived, 2 limousines, the heads of MGM, Bob Levine, who's broken his back for you fellas, sitting there like total idiots because no one was considerate enough to call to tell us that you arrived when you had arrived ahead of time. Do you know anything about the publicity, what's going on here, or what?
I don't know anything about anything, and I'm frustrated, actually.
All right, so you forget about that. The press are there. We're in the United States waiting for you. Nobody's there. Washington, D.C. top newspaper man trying to reach you fellas for 4.5 weeks to get a 5-minute quote. A 5-minute quote in which you could have got a front-page news story prior to your Washington concert. But we couldn't get you.
Oh, me.
Now, look, Eric, what are we going to do? You got a chance to strip. I say this, if you don't want
I don't know what we're going to do. We do our side of the job.
Yeah, but you the guys are getting a reputation of not being dependable. You know,
But it's not our fault. We can't expect them to do everything.
But Eric, look, all I need is one person to feed the information to. I've given it to Mike, so you say it doesn't get back to you. Then surely amongst you men, you seem to really know what the heck you're talking about, that I can find one man to go to. One man.
Every angle in this group, bar ourselves, is screwed up and cocked up. And we're up to here, and if it's still like this at the end of this tour, I'll tell you, I'm not stinging.
Is it true then the rumors about you breaking up too?
Only reason I'm here now is because we've got contracts signed, and I don't want to get sued.
Well, you broke your back for 2 years, so now because you're not thinking constructively, you're going to throw it all away?
Because somebody else is copping it up for us, and we get the backwash every time.
Then go and talk to Mike. There's contracts can be broken. Talk to the man. There must be somewhere where you can assign somebody for you. I don't think the man's unreasonable. There's got to be something that you can do.
Forget it.
Which one of you
What are you going to go back to do? Two pianos? Michael, we need you.
We stopped Jeffries after about 2 years from being able to book us out at shows. And his theory was, well, you're hot now, make the money. We were saying, but we aren't getting any money. Where's it all going? It's all in the Bahamas, it's all here, it's all there. And it never was. We never had the time to look for it.
About $6 million later, right? You know, we went down to the to draw our money out and relax and maybe go on holiday. The bank had disappeared. The Bahamas were under a new governorship by then.
It's the old story, you know. You do all this work, and at the end of it, you haven't got a bean, and you think, well, what the hell happened here? You know, there's somebody made some money somewhere.
Today at Fordham University, New York, the Animals are on the verge of breaking up.
I think the Animals are great together. I think they work well together.
We need a fresh approach to stage and material before things go too far and we get too bored and we can't be bothered anymore.
I've been in the group now for 3 months, and I find that things weren't happening on stage very well. And I think that everybody's going off in their own directions.
It's been one long one-night stand for the last 2 years. And I'm physically very tired. And a little mentally tired too. So it's time to slow down and do some work.
But I think Eric Burdon is an outstanding singer.
The Animals were their own worst enemy.
If he would have stayed with the original band, they could have been the Stones.
Lord, see what you have done. Oh, see, City Rider. Lord, see, you have done. Nice one, you gone away and left me. Now, your old man has gone. Well, I'm going away, baby, and I won't
were on a yacht in the Bahamas, recording in the Bahamas, remote. And I remember the tension was so high between members of the band and the road crew that one morning I came down to breakfast and I just said, "Hey guys, I'm out of it. I'm leaving. I'm going to form my own band, and that's it. I can't take this no more." I went back to London and put another group of animals together, the New Animals. So I found the equivalent of England's hippie rising stars, you know. John Weeder, who was a guitar player, had the same kind of Who electronic feel, but also he played classical violin, which I thought was a great addition, and he played good bass as well, so he could switch around a lot of instruments, and he was a great musician.
John Weeder, this guy, I thought he had my favorite, I'm telling you, he had my favorite guitars. I was an Eric Clapton freak and everything and all these people, but looking back, this guy had the coolest guitar sound for just taking one note and hitting it and laying on. Just hit the best vibrato. That's because he's a violin player.
The rooms were so much colder then. My father was a soldier then, and times were very hard when I was young. When I was young, I smoked my first cigarette at 10, and for girls I had a bad yen, and I had quite a ball when I was young. When I was young, it was more important. Pain, more painful, and laughter much louder, yeah. When I was young.
We had Vic Briggs on lead guitar, Danny McCulloch on bass.
It's like he started playing with musicians, guys that were like credible musicians.
I wanted my own thing, my own identity, and leave the Animals behind.
They were so good, man, it just blew my mind. I said, God, this guy's got a good band now. I mean, he had a real good band.
I named the band the New Animals, and we then set about involving ourselves, ensconcing ourselves in Los Angeles as part of the California scene. Did a lot of forays up into the Bay Area, but we all preferred Southern California to live in, and became the Beverly Hillbillies, and just went out with a light show and traveled the United States and had monumental success.
Cadillac, I'll buy you fishtail Cadillac. All you gotta do is love me. All I need is love. All you need is love. Love is all you need, and that's all right. It's all right. I'll take you on a trip. Do you wanna take a trip? I'll take you on a guided trip, babe. And if all you do is love me, you don't need me.
got into the writing mode, you know, when I came to America. My writing started to loosen up, and I remember the first song that I wrote that I felt was really a song was When I Was Young. I produced it too. Same with Sky Pilot, White Houses, San Francisco Nights, Monterey. They were all mine, you know.
Monterey and Sky Pilot, to me, it was a big change. When I first heard those songs by Eric, I thought, oh, this is like different. It was like more, it seemed like it was more personal. It was more of a, they were less pop kind of songs, they were like stories. It's in a way he became a storyteller as a writer.
I never look or acknowledge what we did at Monterey as being anything significant. We just happened to be there. It was a new band. I didn't have the control of the band that I'd like to have had. So I made up for it by writing a song, Monterey, dedicated to the festival, which became a hit record for us.
People came and listened. Some of them came and played. Others give flowers away. Yes, they did. Down in Monterey. Down in Monterey. Young God smiled upon the crowd. Their music being born of love. Children dance out in vain. Religion was being born. Down in
Monterey was, I always dug Monterey because I was there. So I was at that show, you know. I was at those 3 days in the Lost World, man.
It's blind. Oh, that is shack now music makes me cry. The hoop exploded into fire and light. You Massacre's music was black as night. The Grateful Dead, the everybody thinks. Jimi Hendrix, baby, believe me, set the world on fire.
Everybody just touched each other, you know, held each other, whether you were strangers or whether you were lovers or whatever, you know.
10,000 electric guitars were grooving real loud.
There was this English actress, and I remember she was standing there with a rose, a single red rose. She put out her hand, and our hands just like touched. And I remember just taking the rose and eating it. People, I like to see how far I can push things. I like to make people think, and that's what we set out to do with the New Animals. And I think we were pretty successful at it, to the point of where that's what put me in close quarters with Jimi Hendrix, because he was about the same thing, and we were on common ground. And I remember looking out the window at an anti-Vietnam war demonstration with people throwing rocks and bottles at the front of the U.S. Embassy, and a line of British cops on horses beating them back. And we were leaning out the window and we could see it happening right in front of us. And I said, "What do you think of that, Jimmy?" And he said, "Well, all I can say is," he says, "when the Red Chinese comes screaming down from China through North Vietnam and takes South Vietnam, you'll understand why the U.S. is trying so hard in Southeast Asia." And I realized that he was still a soldier. And that's what was magical about this guy, is that he'd laid down the M16 and picked up a Stratocaster, and realized that it had much more killing power than the M16. You know, I saw something in him that he didn't see in himself. Was the transgression from soldier to soldier of peace. You know, And that's the way we looked at at ourselves. Not just him and me, but all of us. Then we were soldiers of warriors of love.
And instead of marching down the street with M1s, M16s, all these rifles and stuff, marching down the street with a little bit of guitars, something like this.
Think of all the good times that I've wasted having good times. Think of all the good times that I've wasted having good times. All of my lying, I remember her crying. All of my sinning, I was never winning. Instead of complaining, I could have been gaining good times. Yeah, we all are having a jolly good time, and everything is working out fine. All of my lying, I remember her crying. All of my sinning, I was never winning. I'm going to take it easy, baby, and it's the beginning of my good time. You know what I'm talking about. Good time.
Zoot's Pad. Everybody stopped by Zoot's Pad. It was like crossroads of the universe. That's where we put LSD to the maximum effect.
It was a question of us just having a melee of people hanging around the flat before and after gigs.
Sexuality, girls.
So what you could say was that nobody really belonged to anybody. It was all very free man, if you understand what I mean.
Jimmy and I shared the same girlfriends, and I guess that's why we got to be running buddies, because I used to go out with this girl called Kathy Etchingham, who was running buddies with my future wife, Angie King. And we all hung out at Zoot Money's house. And that was Jimmy's first stop-off when he first landed in London.
It was the fact that I knew, and a couple of other people knew, that Jimmy hadn't just taken a tab or just had one drink too many. He was always likely to have taken 3 tabs within the last half hour. He actually pushed himself right out on the limb as far as his sensibilities are concerned.
I mean, poor Jimmy, everywhere he went, he was like the top gunfighter that everybody wanted to take out. He painted himself into a corner. He wanted to play jazz so badly. He wanted to be an artist so badly. He wanted to make movies. He wanted to paint. But everybody wanted to see the burning of the axes. Try to tell Jimmy to stop taking acid. In a way, stoned all the time, man, high all the time.
The breaking up of the New Animals, or the new Animals as they were actually that I joined, was as a result of Eric once again wanting to change management. And I can't explain that. Many people have tried to explain why Eric all of a sudden seems to need to change management. That is one of the eternal dilemmas, I think.
When Eric Burdon when he hooked up with War, he kind of discovered the band, basically, and they made it after him, right, really.
They were, in essence, Southern California street gang, with relatives within the band. I think cousins, you know.
And that blew my mind. I mean, that was my dream, would have been to join a black band and be the front man in a black band.
High up on a mountain top, thinking to the world, in front of every kind of girl. Listen, listen. There was long ones, tall ones, big ones, round ones, black ones, brown ones, funky, funky, funky one. Out of the middle came a lady. Wow. She whispered in my ear something crazy. She said, spin that wine, take that girl. Spin that wine, take that girl. Spin that wine, take that girl, yeah.
If I had to do it all over again, and I could wish, right, that I could change things, okay, from the beginning, I'd be playing in a band like this one.
Remember, I'm just a soul. My intentions are good. Oh, Lord, don't let me be sometimes I get so carefree.
When Eric called me last October and asked, me if I was interested in doing this project with him, basically his idea was that he wanted a reorganization of the band, and he really wanted to take the music to, in his words, I want to take it to a different level.
Brian is such a pleasure, I waited for years to work with a great keyboard player. I waited for years to work with Brian, as an individual. He's always been in my mind, from time to time. We come from the same place.
His idea of performance, his energy, and the motor that drives him as far as performing, I identify with that 100%. It's coming out exactly the same place that mine is. You go on and you give 150%.
The thing that I think made Eric, or makes Eric, unique in performance is that he actually does believe the things that he's saying.
What I like about Eric and I admire is here's a guy who has come right through the business and had the kind of handling or mishandling that he's had, and run the gauntlet with the wolves at his heels, and there's no malice in him at all. He's just he's out there like me for the musical experience. And I said, hey Eric, I'm into a good play, man.
I think he's an artist. He takes chances. He's a real musician artist. Everybody wants to be richer and richer and richer and never have to ever work again, but if you're a real musician, you want to sing and play anyway.
What's done is done. All I can do is keep alive as an artist, and and take those changes that I'm going through and revitalize them and lay them on my audience as a performer. What am I most proud of? Well, the only thing I got to be proud of is hearing applause in my ears when I come off the stage every night.
Please don't let me be misunderstood. When I think of all the good times that I've wasted having good times, when I think of all the good time that's been wasted having good times, when I was drinking, I should have been thinking. When I was fighting, I could have done the right thing. All of that boozing, I was really losing. Good times, good times. When I think of all the good time that's been wasted having good times, when I I think of all the good time that's been wasted, having good times. All of my life, I remember him crying, my useless talking. I could have been walking instead of complaining. I could have been gaining good times. Yeah, we all are having a jolly good time, and everything is working out fine. Useless talking, all of that knocking, all of my sinning. I could have been winning. I have to be easy, and it's a beginning of good time.